at Chat 263 News Zimbabwe. Then the lady in the room, Melanie Ishola, editor Punch Media Group Nigeria. And for my far left is Hassan Mohammed from Gubjub in Somalia. And of course, we are going to start with you, Nigel, because that song touches your country. Perhaps you can tell us, what does it entail?
The song, a few years ago, we had a cyclone that devastated the eastern part of the country. So that incident, obviously, loss of life, many people died, families, their lives have changed forever. Children swept away, and it's just speaking about God help us, crying out, we're waiting for a sign, essentially, yeah.
All right, and perhaps maybe you can tell us from that particular song, what insights really come with it to your people at that particular sad moment or that tribulation time of your country?
It was a tough time because it was an incident that we didn't see, we didn't foresee it. Within a few days, we're told there's a cyclone that's coming. People are obviously warned, but not enough action was taken to remove people from those areas. Mm-hmm. And of course, as journalists, we've gone to visit those areas since then, and people are still traumatized even up to now, up to today. When it rains, especially heavily, mm-hmm. people are afraid. So you can tell that it's trauma. People are still suffering from trauma. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Melanie, we all know that Nigeria is one of the country that is known for music-wise and all that. Does it also apply to Nigeria as well?
So essentially, music in Nigeria would speak to different socio-political, ethnic issues that are rife amongst us. And as a multi-ethnic, multilingual nation, we're talking of over 500 languages and over 300 ethnic groups, then indeed people are able to speak to these issues that we suffer. So Melanie, and if I was talking flooding...
Melanie, just a bit, trying to fix your mic, it's not well. Maybe you can move to Hassan. Perhaps you can also tell us, do you also share the same traits with Zimbabwe when it comes to music?
Yeah, we share. We are oral society and we love artists. And when we express our feeling, we use songs and also poetry. We depend on songs. Where nowadays there is unemployment is very high, and there is a young music player who produce We Need a Life apart from this situation. Sport and music, it touches us. So when we even when we are doing a courtship, we use poetry, we use songs, we send them those who to express your love. It's very strong. You have to send a message through and music. So we depend on it a lot.
All right, so maybe if we can go back to Nigel, and your region is just emerging from one of the worst flooding situations. How are you guys coming out of it? Remember, Kenya right now, we are experiencing El Nino, and we might also be experiencing whatever you guys experienced. How did you guys come out of it?
Look, there were a lot of companies that came on board to support, whether it's through providing temporary accommodation, tents, and so forth, government intervention as well. There's more awareness of the climate change, generally speaking, but I think specifically this part of the country has really understood that when it does rain heavily, they need to make adjustments and obviously seek safer places, to avoid what happened with Cyclone Idai.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So perhaps if we were to adapt a thing or two from Zimbabwe, as I said, currently Kenya is also going through the flooding and stuff. Maybe what should do advise Kenyans to adapt that maybe you guys failed in it, and we hope that other African nations can adapt just for their own sake?
Well, I think the first and foremost, just be aware that climate change is a real thing. Mm-hmm. So if we were planting our maize on the 1st of November, that's not, we did that 10 years ago, that's not what we should be doing now. Let's really pay attention, which sort of leads to my second point. Let's try and get more access to more information about when should we plant. Mm-hmm. Let's not make assumptions about, we've always done this on the 1st of November, let's continue. Things have changed. I think it's also important to use the technology that's out there, listen to the weather report. Obviously, I know you guys at KTN have a solid weather report team. Make sure that people tune in and are aware of whether it's going to rain and, and what does that mean to communities around the country.
We are speaking about climate change, and Melanie, perhaps you can just talk to us about, for example, in Kenya, we just celebrated World Trees Planting Day, which was quite a big event in Kenya. In matters climate change, perhaps, what is there in Nigeria that can be adapted in Kenya, Somalia, and other African countries in mitigating climate change?
Okay, thank you. So Nigeria equally is facing serious climate change episodes, and flooding is big in Nigeria. Personally, I was a victim of the flooding that just took place in Nigeria, and it's happened over a period of about 3 months now. First in the northern part of Nigeria, and towards the end of it, you see it in the southern part of Nigeria, when majorly dams, and these are dams controlled by border countries of, say, Chad to the north, Cameroon to the north as well, or south, and then you're talking the Republic of Benin to the south, and these things actually get, to displace thousands of people, in their hundreds of thousands of people from their accommodation. It has lasting impacts on agriculture. And when you merge this as well with insecurity, then we're talking real inflations in agriculture and food in Nigeria. But one of the key things that I understand that Nigeria does is essentially to share information, just like Nija was saying, ahead of time. And this gets a lot of people to relocate ahead, and it helps farmers as well to literally plan their farming seasons around the time when flooding is not likely to happen.
Okay, so maybe what happens when for example, the Met Department is inaccurate sometimes? We are to err. So it's inaccurate sometimes, people are not prepared, and then it just comes. In certain situations, who's to blame?
Well, I mean, in a place like Nigeria, where we're still, in a way, struggling with accountability, the media is essentially trying to hold the right agency, the right government officials to account, and we expect, of course, more transparency. I'd say a number of times people speak to the people in charge, and in that regard, it will be the Nigerian meteorological agencies to say the prediction wasn't right, and how do you take responsibility for these things? What do you do in form of palliatives? And you see our government then responding with palliatives, whether at the local level, the state level, or the federal government level, essentially to reach out to these people. Sometimes emergency, getting people off the really tough and difficult sides of town or the country, through some lifeboats or whatnot, just to ensure that people are safe. But of course, a number of times we lose a lot of lives, which again could have been avoided.
Hassan, you are our immediate neighbor. Perhaps have you also encountered where the Met Department says something that they come and apologize for later, and how have you gone about it as a country?
I think Somalia now is rainy season, and it's flooding, and it's killed also a number of people, and also it destroyed a number of properties. In the dry season, we are struggling with the drought, and people in Somalia, as you know, we depend on agriculture and what they call animals. So the birth of animals. So the calamity is affected immediately, and it's rainy season. It's flooding, and whole towns and whole number of the rivers also break out. So it takes a number of lives, and government is very weak, and it does have a number of resources to mitigate this. I think it's needed partnership from those who are diplomatic partners, and we are struggling. We are middle of climate change challenge. We are SEMA, I think, a desert. So when it's dry, we are suffer, and when it's raining, we are suffer both. So we need a solution which we can mitigate those climate changes. And also, we do not contribute climate change badly because we are not industrial. We are in the ancient age. So I think we are victims of the action of others. So we need a partnership. I think we should solve this. Yeah.
All right. Just aside from drought, let us move swiftly a bit to matters insecurity. And in Nigeria, the northern part of it, what is really causing this conflict in the northern part of Nigeria?
Well, if you ask me, there would be a lot of reasons. And quite honestly, where you see a huge divide between those who have and those who do not have, where you see widening economic gaps, you should expect these things. Where you equally see widening educational gaps, you should also see this. To understand Nigeria a bit better, you're looking at the northern part with maybe the more population in the entire nation. Nigeria consists of 36 states plus the FCT. The FCT is not a state, otherwise it would say 37. And 19 states are northern states, and the rest are shared between southwest, southeast, and the south-south. And of these northern states, you're looking at a number of these states that have the highest number of pupils or children that are out of school, highest number of child marriages, and a host of these other issues. And when you merge these things together, you may understand why the conditioning for insecurity or hatching episodes of insecurity became so rife in that space. So about almost 2 decades ago, when this thing had started, if you checked historically, you would understand that it began in a state called Borno State, northeastern Nigeria, and essentially people looked at how that equally was linked to politics, of how those who were clamoring for the soul of that state at that time had used a couple of youths to secure the seat, and which eventually had been armed, with lots of ammunitions and whatnot, and eventually went rogue, turning on the government of the state. And this essentially infiltrated the other parts of the north, and now the southern parts of the country. So it's a nationwide issue.
All right. So Nigel, perhaps you can tell us, as a journalist, how do you cover matters insecurity in your country? How sensitive does it get when you're covering such situations?
Yeah, of course, we just had an election, and I'm sure you know what reporting around an election is like. Just to give an example, of course, there's heightened from the security forces and stuff like that, wanting to ensure that we report accurately. I think that's also, Zimbabwe has been in the media for many years, not always for the most positive things. And so, of course, as a journalist on the ground, we know that if we report inaccurately, we should expect a visit from someone, so it's also not a good thing to also just embellish, and report inaccurately. So I think it's up to us as journalists, especially if we're trying to remain credible. Both for our various stakeholders, advertisers, and so forth, our readers, to tell the truth. But we also know that we are operating in a country where security matters are taken very seriously by government. So yeah, it's important to read the room.
Hassan, perhaps you can tell us, because we know about the Al-Shabaab. As a journalist, are you allowed to cover them in Somalia, and how does it?
It's a bit different. I think we cover, but the way we did maybe it's not the way it's to do. And it's open to cover, but you cannot get access where the area they control, and we get threats also from them. But the government also there's offensive against them. When the President Hasha come to the office, he said the biggest challenges we have is the security challenges, and he said that the solution of these challenges may be solution for other challenges. And he organized the local warriors and fighters, and also he tried to organize the government forces to defeat Al-Shabaab and take over the area they control. And that offensive also goes on the outside of the Mogadishu, and also the government deployed several forces in the city to secure and then the civilians. Nowadays, the security of the city, Mogadishu, the capital city of Somalia, get recovery and it's become better. And also the government said we need to they come up with 3 strategies, financial tactic, and also the communication tactic and forces tactic. I think the communication tactic may affect the media to cover the whole stories. Some of the journalists, they make censor for themselves to avoid that the Al-Shabaab use them indirectly. Because of when the Al-Shabaab attack somewhere, the only message they want is to send a message to the world that they still exist. And we are trying to give them space, not to give them space, that we send that message. And that also sabotages the freedom of expression and freedom of thought, because of when you try to hide the real facts, it may be complex to balance what's facts and what's not facts, and also what's right to cover and what's not to cover. So we are in a bit confusion on that issue. But Al-Shabaab Somalis, all other, apart from the Al-Shabaab members, all others, they are for the enemy, and we know. So they do not they attack on civilians and government without this discrimination. So they exploit markets, and also they exploit in the streets. So you can die everywhere if you stay in with the government, Somali government control. So, and also with Somali children, they do not have access to cover from the where Al-Shabaab control. So we cannot tell what's going on there. And also the civilian people who live there, they do not express their thought. And also the internet did not exist. They don't have internet access. But those who live in urban areas, they have internet access. So those who are under Al-Shabaab control, they live another world, which there's no internet access, there's no telephone access, and they are deaf people. They do not get news from the other world.
Mm-hmm. All right, aside from that, as we round up, I want to give you 2 minutes each, perhaps to tell me inflation is also becoming a global crisis. Mm-hmm. In Zimbabwe, how dire is it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we are sitting at a triple-digit inflation rate. We operate and live in a country where there's a multi-currency system, so we do use other currencies, typically the US dollar or the South African rand, along with the Zim dollar. And what businesses tend to do is we tend to transact in US or Zim dollars. But generally speaking, we use the US dollar to transact, and so we'll quickly convert our Zim dollars into US dollars, and if we have to make a payment, whether it's a staff member or rent, for example.
So you don't use
We don't. Yeah, most. I can't think of any landlord who's receiving their rental payments in local currencies. That wouldn't make sense.
That's very interesting, Melanie.
Okay, so inflation is huge in Nigeria, and it's even become worse as the year rolled by, especially this year. I mean, we're looking at a double-digit inflation that's been going high. In agriculture, you're talking inflation to the degree people are shouting, they cannot even feed. I mean, I think part of the big issues for us is our economy is hugely dollar dependent. And so right now in Naira exchanges, I do not know as of this morning, but I know with the recent figures in Naira exchange, a dollar exchanges for more than 1,000 Naira. Yes. And when we started this year, it was barely 500 Naira. And then you're looking at it having doubled. And in the period of a few years, it's tripled, because just a few years or months back before this year, we're just at barely 200, over 200. And this is where we are. People have continued to earn the same salaries. People have continued to operate in the same business environment. A lot of things have not changed. And so you find a situation where today you're patronizing a vendor, and he puts out a disclaimer to say, please check with me if you're not paying within the hour we negotiated, because by evening the prices may have well changed. And this has put a lot of tension on people. And then you see how this has resulted in a lot of youths moving out in droves. But to be fair to the government, they are reviewing a few policies here and there to see how this essentially helps, cope with things. And one of it is actually checking with increasing the minimum wage across the civil service. But there is the critique of that to say not all Nigerians are employed by the civil service. So what happens to those of us who work in the private sector? So it's a big deal, and we're not really dealing well with over half the population of Nigeria actually suffering multi-dimensional poverty. So this is huge.
I think it's dollarized. We have a local currency, but it's lost. It is wallets. After the collapsing of the central government in 1991, there is no authorities who publish local currency. So the people, they move to use a dollar. So everything is dollarized. We use US dollar. Even if you are so shining, you send cents for dollar through the mobile money. So we are part of United States of America. If you are in Mogadishu, you are buying everything through the dollar.
So you and Zimbabwe,
Yeah.
same.
Yeah.
Kenya and Nigeria, same.
Same.
Yeah, of course. And perhaps maybe just a parting shot from the three of you as we wind up the show.
Yeah, look, Zimbabwe is a country that is, in its 40s, generally a safe country, but we still have a lot of work to do.
I mean, I hear you, honestly. And for me, I'm looking at a Nigeria who is going through, a number of people would say, birth pangs. And it looks like it's toughest now just because of what we're about to birth. I just seem to think with the changes in governance and whatnot, Nigerians just expect that we have this change come fast. Because again, trust is eroding from the people to its government and whatnot. But then we see, as it seems democracy seem to be growing in Nigeria, that indeed this will deliver some dividends very soon. The hope is high, and I can only hope our government really does it fast.
We hope to succeed, and because of after a struggle, we are struggling to stay on through this process of state building. We take a federal system of in 2022. 2012. Yeah, no, let me check. 2012. We take a federal system. Now we are struggling on state building. We can say we are the rich who are dying for hunger, because we have the longest coast in Africa, and also I think we have minerals. Also, our most part of is agricultural land, and also we have a number of animals like goats, camels, who can produce dairy products, but we do not utilize. I think we need to change our mindset to move progress through the progress. So we have hope.